Hi, I'm Lorna Conkergood, and I'm a graduate research assistant with the Grenfell Art Gallery in Corner Brook, Newfoundland. Today, I'm bringing the next installment of the Grenfell Art Gallery series, Isolate and Create. Today, our focus is going to be on painting portraits. Specifically, I'll demonstrate maybe how to use paint to mix different skin tones, a little bit of color theory. And at the end of the demonstration, then there is sort of a stop animation progression of a portrait that I did yesterday. So stay tuned for that. Also, if your internet connection's not great where you're living, or for whatever reason it's just not great today, a printable PDF version of this demonstration and the portrait techniques that I use, they're just my techniques, is available on the Grenfell Art Gallery's website, or by emailing gallery@grenfell.mun.ca, and the printable PDF will be emailed out to you. And that way you can follow along, print it off and follow it along that way. Okay, so what I'll do is actually just talk a little bit about what people paint portraits on first, so that you can make that decision before worrying about mixing paint or your subject. So I have a few supports just handy here to show, and these are just MDF boards or masonite boards that I've gessoed. Gesso is just like a paint primer so that the paint has something to adhere to on the board. And I've put just a little bit of color into the gesso so that it's not just white. So board is one of the supports that you can use for your portrait. Another is sort of a pre-stretched canvas that you can get from any art supply store. Generally, they say they're pre-primed, so they're quick. They're not always archival, and they can get expensive if you buy a really an artist grade one versus a student grade one. This is just an inexpensive one that somebody in my household has already put some pigment on here. And you could also use, let's say, raw canvas, and you could just staple it to the wall. It doesn't have to be stretched. You can stretch it if you have a stretcher. And then you can gesso this. And you can use clear gesso so that the canvas actually shows through, or you can use white gesso or whatever you like, but they usually need to be treated a little bit so that the paint is archival and doesn't eventually over time eat through the canvas. So there's a few supports, and other things that you'll need in order to do a portrait is sort of a variety of brushes, different sizes. I like to have a variety of palette knives for paint mixing. And then the palette itself, a palette can be a glass window that you tape around the edges so it's safe. It can be simply a styrofoam tray that's been thoroughly washed. Or some people use enamel trays. I've seen those as palettes where people mix their paints. But something that's white usually is the best, because then you can see the true color of the colors you're mixing. And that'll be important when you're trying to match skin tones or even alter skin tones. That's also a strategy people use for portraiture. So I think I'm going to change the camera angle and show you a little bit about color theory and how to mix paint. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to talk about is the color wheel, and here's a simpler color wheel. And it's possible that you already know this, but opposites on the color wheel are complementary colors. And I'm going to use the word complementary in reference to color theory a few times during this video or demonstration. And this is a much more complex color wheel. But I just thought I would pull this up. Books are great. I know that there's a plethora of information online, but I still like to have books around and even leave them open to my favorite pages, like how to mix browns. So the other thing I'll mention about that color wheel is one side of the color wheel is generally considered the cool colors, and one side is considered, oh no, I can't find it. Okay. Red, orange, and yellow are considered the warmest colors. Purple, blue, and green are considered the cool colors. Having said that, there are warm blues and there are cool reds. And I will talk about warm and cool colors as well. So hopefully that'll make sense as the video goes along. I'll just put that aside. Also, speaking of reference books, I have this one. It's a very idiot's guide, easy as it gets drawing, and it just shows the proportions of the face when you're looking straight on. And it's interesting to note some of these things. I generally don't map out the face or use a grid to draw initially. I just go for it. So, and then hope for the best. So also online there'll be proportions of the face and resources for that. But books, again, I don't know if you have them already, but yeah. So my palette that I usually use consists of the primary colors red, yellow, and blue. And I don't usually buy mixed green, like tube of green or tube of purple. I mix those things as I go. Having said that, I have those on hand in case I really want to experiment. So I kind of laid out, this would be a cool red, it's closer to purple, and this would be a warm red, it's closer to orange on the color wheel. And this would be a cool yellow, and this would be a warm yellow. This one's closer to orange, this one's closer to green on the color wheel. And this is a cooler blue, this is a warmer blue. This is closer to green on the color wheel, this one's closer to purple. I hope that made sense. I generally use a very cool palette, so I don't often use the warmer colors in my mixing. Having said that, they do sort of show up here and there. Oh, by the way, don't judge me for having my coffee in my workspace. No food or drink. I guess I've thrown that rule out the window. Anyway, I'm not going to be using that. And so this is actually another cool red called Rose Madder, and that I often use for portraiture. Another color or tube of paint you'll want to invest in is white, because that helps you tint the different paint that you're mixing. And I'm using oil today, and I like to have a medium. And this is Zek, made by Grumbacher. It's not an advertisement, by the way. I like this. It smells okay, because some of them are pretty smelly. Yeah, just thought I would show those, as well as brush cleaner. This stuff's fantastic. But Murphy's Oil Soap is really great, and for quick cleanup, surprisingly, baby wipes work really well. I don't know if I want what's cleaning up my oil paint to be good at cleaning up my baby's bottom, but I guess that's the way it is. All right, so without further ado, let's mix some paints here. So what I do is I was just going to show how I lay out my palette. This is a window that I've taken the frame off of. I've put a board behind it that I painted white first so that I would have a white surface to mix paint on, and then I just took duct tape and taped around it. I'm just getting older paint here. So this color is the Rose Madder. I'm just going to put a little bit of that on. This is just how I lay out my palette, and it's you know, a person can just decide how they want to do it. Oh, that came out. I probably didn't want that much. Oh, well. So this is a lemon cadmium. This was a cadmium red medium, I think. No, red light. And this one was the Rose Madder. And this is a ultramarine blue, and I think this is cerulean, no, cobalt cerulean. This is the warmer blue. So if you decide to do a portrait and post it on social media, it would be great if you would use the hashtag isolate and create, and hashtag Grenfell Art Gallery on Instagram. There's a Grenfell Art Gallery Facebook page as well as Vimo. The Vimo page has all the other isolate and create videos and projects. Okay, so the first thing that I do, these are my favorite color mixing palettes. Some of these are quite inexpensive. I like the metal ones. They clean up really well, but plastics are great too. When you mix, I like to mix just a little bit of the warm red into the rose madder, the cool red, because this tends to be very transparent and not a very strong pigment. So if I just pull a little bit of that over, and then just a tiny bit, that might even be too much. And this is mixing my first color, and it's a red. And what you want to remember is, like, a cadmium red is very, very strong pigment-wise, and so if you're mixing it with other things, maybe use 1 part cad and like 4 or 5 parts yellow, because it's that strong. So now I'm going to try and mix sort of a medium tone for skin. My subject is this is a printout of a photograph my daughter took when quarantine isolation sort of was mandated. She dyed her hair blue, which I was not a total fan of, but in the end it was amazing and I loved it. So did she, and it's not about me anyway. Okay, little insight to my life. So I'm using this as my reference just because I thought the colors were dynamic and that painting blue hair might be kind of fun. So yeah, these are the skin tones that I'm going to be looking at today. There's some pink in her cheeks. There's some yellow in the highlight parts. There's even some blue or purpley in the shadows here. And that's something that I look at first. Oh, and there's pink behind the hair on the cheek. That's something that I look at first before I start mixing this. Because if she had a different skin tone, I would mix these colors differently. And these colors can be used to mix any skin tone. Like if a person is really tanned, or if you're painting someone that's of Black descendant or Indigenous, that's all possible just by using different amounts and variations of the primary colors. So I'm going to mix the mid-tone right now, and I'll probably take all of this because, like I said, the lemon yellow is very weak. Weak pigment-wise. So I think what that means is that the particles are further apart and cadmium's particles are really tight. I don't know, I'm definitely not a chemist. But yeah, so there's an initial, actually quite dark tone, and it's very orange. So if I want to take some of the brilliance out of the orange, I should mix what's opposite of orange on the color wheel. And I know that in my head, and you might too already. For those of you that don't know, it's the primary color blue. So I'll just put some orange here and show you what happens when you put, and I'm really economical when I add blue to orange because I don't want it to go green. But to my own sort of freckly skin, that's getting close. And then if I want to lighten it, I just take some white. So I'll just put again just a little bit there. And I actually think that if I'm mixing my skin tone, I could add a little bit of red. Let's just see what that does. But yeah, so I'm mixing, this would be a very dark tone, I would say, of skin. And then a medium tone, and then a lighter tone could even have more pink in it. So I'll just take the white over here. I may need more white now that I did that. But like looking at cheek area, and adding some yellow for this highlight that's in the face and down here, even on the chin. Yeah, I also like to use a little bit of purple in the face usually. So I'm just using the ultramarine and rose madder. And this can be used in place of black because it's quite dark. Oh, that's probably too much. I need a bit more white. So yeah, when we go to add shadows in the face, because my skin tone and my daughter's skin tone is so orange, purple and blue actually, the complementary color on the color wheel, are great for shadowy areas. So hopefully you see that. So yeah, I would probably get started. Now for the demonstration, I didn't use as much paint as I would have probably put out on my palette to start out. But because I'm not sure how much I'm gonna paint after this, I didn't want to waste too much paint. So this is the portrait that I worked on yesterday in reference to the Isolate and Create portrait project. So after this video, or after I stop talking, part of the video is going to be a stop animation of the stills I took during the process of creating this little painting, which is in reference to that photo I showed you earlier. So I hope you have fun. I hope you have a lot of fun trying to master portraiture. It's very, it can be really rewarding. And as with anything like soccer, piano, being an artist takes practice. And I hope you have an awesome time with the Isolate and Create series.